The Philippines just did something it has not done in 119 days. The official line of how dangerous Mayon Volcano is being moved. Mayon, the most perfectly symmetrical volcano on Earth, has now been erupting for 119 consecutive days without pause. At 4:00 hours in the morning on Monday, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology released its 24-hour bulletin. Buried in the rockfall column was a number 45% higher than the day before. 411 rockfalls in 24 hours, up from 284. 4 pyroclastic density current signals. Crater glow visible to the naked eye. The volcanic edifice shows simultaneous deflation across most of the mountain and localized inflation on the northeastern flank. 102,406 people have been displaced from this single volcano since January 6th. 5,440 are still in evacuation centers tonight. The current eruption was officially classified this week as the strongest effusive eruption Mayon has produced in modern monitoring history. This is the volcano whose 1814 eruption buried the town of Cagzava under 9 meters of ash and killed roughly 1,200 people. The bell tower of the Cagzava church still stands today, 212 years later, sticking up out of the dirt as the only visible structure of the buried town. It is, on day 119 of the current eruption, no longer the only line being measured against historic records. But here is the detail that tells the real story. The official story Monday was that thousands of evacuees are being supported. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. spoke to reporters in Manila. He said the government was opening all the thoroughfares so that everyone who needs to enter can enter, and everyone who needs to leave can leave. Then he added one phrase in Filipino, "Huwag lang magbuga ulit," as long as the volcano doesn't erupt again. What was almost nowhere in the international coverage was that PHIVOLCS is now formally studying the expansion of the permanent danger zone. The 6-kilometer radius around the summit that has been in place since 1992 to 7 kilometers. The line on the map of how dangerous Mayon is being moved. For the first time in 119 days of continuous eruption, and for the first time since the line was drawn after the 1993 deaths, the hazard line is being moved. It is not because the volcano got bigger, but because the assessment of its reach just shifted by 1 kilometer. How we got here, PHIVOLCS raised Mayon to alert level 3 on January 6th. 3 rivers of molten rock have been advancing down 3 flanks for 4 months. Then on May 2nd at 4:28 in the afternoon, the Mi-isi flow front stopped advancing. It collapsed instead. Dr. Teresito Bacolcol, director of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, summarized it in his first leadership statement on Monday. His exact words, "On Saturday, there was a PDC due to the repeated collapse of hot lava from the summit or upper slope. By 5:38 that afternoon, the pyroclastic density current had run 4 kilometers from the summit." Here is what changed in the 24 hours that followed. A rockfall on Mayon is not random. It is the upper slope shedding mass, hypersthene andesite, the thick gas-rich lava the volcano has been producing for 4 months, accumulating on the steep summit slopes until it falls. In late April, Mayon was averaging between 195 and 281 rockfalls per day. On May 2, with the PDC event, the count rose to 284. In a normal cycle, the count after a major collapse drops. The slope has just shed its load. On May 3 to 4, the count jumped to 411. The upper slope is shedding at 45% above the previous day's rate. Either new lava is being supplied to the cone faster than the previous cycle, or Saturday's collapse destabilized the structure further, and it is now actively breaking apart. Either way, the next collapse is being prepared. Now, look at where that material is coming from. The May 4 bulletin reported something the previous bulletins had not: short-term deflation of the volcanic edifice, alongside localized inflation on the northeastern flank. The mountain as a whole is contracting. One specific zone is expanding. Deflation across most of the volcano is consistent with magma evacuating from a shallow chamber via lava effusion. Localized northeastern inflation is consistent with magma pressure building in a separate pocket. The volcano is simultaneously emptying one chamber and filling another. The eruption you can see is functioning as the safety valve of the southern conduit. The northeastern bulge is a different conduit being primed. If the eruption you can see is the safety valve, the question is what happens if the pressure that has been finding it on the south flank shifts north. Here is what is not making most headlines. There's a line on a map around Mayon Volcano. It is 6 kilometers wide, drawn as a perfect circle around the summit. It has been there since 1992. It was drawn for a reason. On February 2nd, 1993, a pyroclastic flow on Mayon traveled 6 kilometers down the Bonga Gully and killed 77 people. They were farmers working the lower slopes on the volcanic soil that produces some of the highest rice yields in Albay. After the deaths, PHIVOLCS established the 6-kilometer permanent danger zone. The radius was set at the maximum reach of the flow that had just killed them. That line has stood unchanged for 33 years. But the line drawn in 1993 was not the first one. There was an earlier line. It was not drawn on a map. It was drawn in stone. On February 1st, 1814, a pyroclastic flow rolled down Mayon's southern flank and hit the town of Cagsawa at full speed. The town was buried under 9 meters of ash. An estimated 1,200 people died, most of them inside the stone Catholic church, believing the walls would protect them. The bell tower of the church remained the only structure tall enough to keep its top above the ash line. It still stands today as the highest point of a buried village. The 1814 flow reached the bell tower. The 1993 flow reached 6 kilometers. The May 2nd flow reached 4. On May 4th, GMA news reporter Bea Pinlac confirmed on air that PHIVOLCS. Authorities are now studying the expansion of the permanent danger zone from 6 kilometers to 7. The zone has not been formally widened. The studies are ongoing. But the very fact that the agency is publicly considering the expansion on day 119 of the eruption, when the existing 6-kilometer zone was drawn at the maximum reach of a fatal flow and has held since 1993, is itself a statement. The line that was drawn after 77 deaths in 1993 is being reconsidered before any deaths in 2026. And it is still not over. PHIVOLCS has not lowered the alert level. They have not announced an end to the eruption. They have not even announced a slowdown. The lava is still advancing on 3 flanks. The rockfall count is the highest single-day reading since early March. The northeastern flank is still swelling. The question is not whether Mayon will erupt again. It has been erupting without stopping for 119 days. The question is not whether the next pyroclastic flow will come down. The May 4th bulletin recorded 4 more PDC signals. The question is whether the people inside the proposed 7-kilometer expanded zone, the residents of Camalig, of Guinobatan, of the families clearing ash off their roofs before it solidifies, and the weight collapses the structure, are paying attention to a line on a map that may shift before the next flow does. 5,440 evacuees are still in 14 centers tonight. Schools are closed in Guinobatan and Camalig. Crops were buried just days before harvest. The Cagsawa bell tower is still standing in the dirt. The permanent danger zone is still officially 6 kilometers. The studies for expansion to 7 are sitting on a desk in Quezon City, and on the south side of the volcano, the next lava flow front is being fed right now. On Monday, the president of the Philippines told reporters that the government was opening all the roads so people could enter and leave. He added one phrase in Filipino, "Huwag lang magbuga ulit," as long as it doesn't erupt again. The Cagsawa bell tower has stood in the dirt since 1814. The line on the map around it has just been measured 1 kilometer too short. If this story is worth telling, subscribe. We cover more of these every week.